Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is unbelievable. It's about how my cheating girlfriend tried to introduce her affair partner as her stepbrother. You won't believe how this one unfolds. My girlfriend was a very superficial girl. She was going to a beauty school to become a hair and makeup artist. I was going to school to become an engineer. I didn't think any less of her for what her career choice was. She was lovely and charming, like Snow White, and cared about the people she encountered. At least, that was what she let me see of her. I took her to a family reunion after we dated for a year, and my mom got some one-on-one time with her in the kitchen. She reported back to me, telling me to dump this girl as fast as possible. I was shocked by the impression she got, and thought my mom was crazy when she told me my girlfriend was extremely rude, selfish, and inconsiderate. I just didn't see what she saw, so I couldn't bring myself to break up with her. She kept surprising me at my dorm with food, movie rentals, or games to play. She also looked forward to any chance I got to take her out clubbing. Usually, I was busy dedicating myself to my studies. I knew my college education would require sheer determination, strength, and focus. Graduation means I wasn't distracted by a woman or, God forbid, getting one pregnant. I knew my girlfriend didn't want to conceive, but she swore she could time her cycle, so there were a few times she persuaded me not to wear protection. One night, my girlfriend tried really hard to convince me to take her out to a venue that had live music and cheap drinks. I told her I couldn't and maintained my resolve. She got pretty upset with me, and I saw her face fade from smiling and adorable to a resentful frown with piercing eye contact. She left without another word, but it made me mad because she strutted out with her angry supermodel walk. It seemed obvious she planned to go without me, which made it impossible for me to focus on studying. I drove to the venue 30 minutes later and spotted her on the dance floor with another man, surrounded by sweaty people. I watched her and kept my distance while I had a drink. I was curious to see the side of her that my mom warned me about. I didn't believe she'd be so low to cheat on me. She valued me as her man and admired my mind. I thought she wanted a secure and happy future with me. What I saw proved the opposite. She was acting like the most gorgeous and newly single woman in the place. It was only a short time before she let the man she was dancing with lead her back to the bar, where they did one more shot before leaving together. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I followed his car while he drove poorly and failed to notice my tailing him. I parked just about 200 feet behind them, so I saw them go into his apartment. I knocked on the door 20 minutes later after deciding it was what I wanted to do. No one answered, even though I know they heard me. Eventually, he answered the door, and when my girlfriend saw me, she tried to look happy and calm. She said this wasn't what I thought it was, that he was actually her gay stepbrother, and they hung out sometimes. He looked at her like she was crazy. She shoved past him to leave with me and closed the door in his face. We started walking away, but AP didn't want to play along. He felt used and embarrassed. He opened the door again to shout that he was sorry for sleeping with my girlfriend, and she told him she was single. I pulled away from her, and she just kept saying that it wasn't true. I told her that even if she didn't sleep with him, I knew he wasn't her gay stepbrother, and I saw the way she danced with him at the club. That was enough for me to believe what my mom said about her. She said I was being unfair because she claimed to be innocent, but I refused to be made a fool for trusting her after this weird night and my mom's warning. I left her there, right by AP's house. She posted dramatic things about me on Facebook, that I left her in the nowhere in the middle of the night, and that I accused her of cheating when she wasn't that kind of person. I felt a little helpless about all the bashing, but I ultimately didn't care because I knew who I was and what I wanted to become. I went back to my studies and forgot all about my ex-girlfriend. To my surprise, just 4 months later, she posted on Facebook with the happy news that she was expecting. 1 hour later, she was publicly freaking out because AP dumped her and accused her of cheating. Apparently, AP couldn't have children, so he knew he was not the father, even though my ex tried to claim he was. It was a huge mess, and I'm glad I got out of the whole situation when I did. My mom was relieved too. Years later, I'm working as an engineer, and my ex is a single mother of two that never obtained her cosmetology degree. Opie, I am sorry your girlfriend proved herself to be a selfish and manipulative woman. You dodged a bullet, thanks to your mother's warning and girlfriend's telling behavior. It worked out really well to follow her that night, and it was the only time you had to, because you were too smart to be playing these games. She was extremely immature, and it worries me to think about all the men she'll probably trick into loving her. Unless, through some miracle, she learns her lesson and becomes a trustworthy woman. Now she has her kids to consider and put above her own desires. Sometimes it takes a shocking life mistake like this to realize the world doesn't bend to your wishes, and you'll get yourself into a bad place if you think selfishly or take advantage of others. Thank you for sharing your story. Now, let's get into our second story for today. I, 41, didn't realize that my wife, 35, was talking to several other men behind my back. The man she talked to the longest paid her for pictures and videos when we were struggling financially. We had 3 kids, one of them nearly an adult, and we were married for 10 years. After she felt like she could get away with talking to AP behind my back, she started making up stories for places she had to go to. One night she told me she was going to get her hair done, and she did, but it took a long time. Another time, this could have happened many times. While I was at work and the kids were at school, she spent the day with him. He was like her sugar daddy. I didn't know she was sneaking out or doing anything behind my back until I got a call from a married woman we were both friends with for about 7 years. She was crying and said she just found out her husband was cheating on her. I was shocked to hear this and told her I was so sorry. I was shocked because when I spent time with her husband, he told me how much he loved his wife. I recalled one time we were alone together and he spoke highly of his wife and then asked me how my wife felt, but then he corrected himself to how I felt about my wife. Right after this memory, she told me my wife was the one sleeping with him. I instantly understood why she was calling me. I had a vision of my heart plopping onto a platter and a fork stabbing it, then a knife cutting into it. I asked her how she knew, and she said she was holding her husband's phone at that very moment. He forgot it when he said he was going to meet some friends. She tells me she was looking at their messages right now, and he lied. He was going to meet my wife at a book club. Hearing her mention the book club made it all too real. That was definitely my wife's thing. She would go every week, but she never invited me to go. I wasn't much of a reader. AP's wife sent me pictures of what was going on while I drove to the book club. These messages mentioned times they had sex, things they wanted to do, and risk pictures. They were all about to get a rude awakening. I busted down the door and found 8 women, all intently and dreamily listening to AP, the only man in the room, reading a romance novel out loud. My wife was wrapped around his arm with her head on his shoulder. The room gasped and looked at me when I walked in. My wife jumped straight to standing, and AP looked like his worst fears were realized. I looked him dead in the eye and said his wife knew what he was doing. He could only say no, but I said yes and added that she sent me the messages between him and you. I pointed to my wife, then AP ran out the door. My wife covered her mouth, and all the other women stared with gaping mouths as this unfolded. I told her she made a vow to me 10 years ago and gave birth to my children only for our marriage to end like this. My voice cracked and tears started flowing. I told her she ruined 2 marriages and I never wanted her to come back into my home again. She very quietly said that this didn't have to happen because she was sorry and learned her lesson. I told her I didn't give a crap if she learned her lesson. That would only benefit her future, but now I had to pick up the pieces of my own life, the life that she gave up for another man. Then I left. One of the women chased me down and handed me a little piece of paper with her phone number on it. All the other women started whispering and awkwardly leaving, itching to spread the word around town about the book club breakup. As soon as I got home, I realized this building didn't feel like home anymore, just a grave of the life I was living. So I packed up the kids and everything I could over the next few days and with my brother's help, moved into my parents' house 3 hours away. This was what I needed to do while I divorced my wife and got financially situated to the point where I could buy a new home. Meanwhile, AP was divorced and moved in with my ex. They probably thought everything was going to be okay for them until they were both ordered to pay child support. But that's not all. AP found out just a few weeks later that he wasn't my wife's only lover, and after some thought, She decided she could do better than him. She moved out, leaving him broke and the sole person living in our old marital home. She moved in with some dangerously rich man. She was treated pretty well there at first, and they actually decided to have a baby together. However, while the paint was drying in the nursery, my wife's new husband cheated on her. Then he wanted the new woman to be his wife and have his babies. So he kicked out my ex, providing her the money for an abortion. I don't know if any of you guys believe in karma, but I am certain that's what happened here. My wife wanted the money and didn't give a crap about anyone else. So that's literally what she got. Temporary riches from someone that didn't give a crap about her. I've since bought a new place and remarried. I thought I should share this story to inspire people, particularly men, who were betrayed by a woman that they trusted. As much as it hurts, we are strong enough to get through it. Men are meant to take the hardest crap dealt in the world. We don't even need much to keep on going. But if a woman fails you, just get another one. I know that sounds heartless, but I was able to do just that very thing. No matter what you're faced with, always be communicative and caring while knowing your own boundaries and what you deserve. That's how you just keep surviving and functioning. Opie, I am glad to hear that justice was served to your cheating wife. There may not be such a thing as two souls destined for each other, but as mature adults, we each have the chance and responsibility to wisely choose the partner we want to commit to and love, no matter what. The person that matches us as closely as possible, among other factors. And when it seems to be getting boring or difficult, you fight to rekindle the love and commitment that you found in each other. If there are things to talk about them. That's how you solve things that are causing problems, no matter how painful, humiliating, or uncertain it is. And if there aren't any jaw-breaking problems, and there's still love in the relationship, then there's no reason to betray. Them being bored, under stress, or tempted by another person certainly is not enough to put your loved one through a tragic life event they must overcome. I'm glad to hear you've overcome this extremely difficult time in your life. Remember, you are worthy of all the love and happiness you find. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is John Smith. I met my wife Kay, who's 4 years older than me, at a sports gym. I work as an instructor. Kay came for a trial lesson. During these lessons, we first measure the client's body stats, then show them around the gym and teach them how to use the machines. The instructor for trial lessons changes weekly. Appointments can be made online. Kay had booked for 10 a.m. I could tell she was the one as soon as I saw her wandering around. I'm Kay, here for the trial lesson. Im Jun. Thank you for booking a trial lesson. That was our first conversation. Honestly, I was surprised at how slim Kay was when I first saw her. I wondered why she even came to the gym. Later, she told me she wanted to build some muscle. After the trial lesson, she decided to join the gym. Over time, as she came more often, Kay discreetly gave me her contact information. It was the first time a woman had approached me, so I thought it was a prank. But we started talking, went on dates, and eventually got married. Kay wanted a big wedding, so we had it in Hawaii. Our gym friends even flew out to join us. I met Kay's best friend, Emily, and her old college friend, Mike, for the first time there. Our marriage was fulfilling. When I was single, I used to eat store-bought meals alone. But after marriage, I'd come home to a lit house, a delicious meal, and a warm bath waiting for me. And, of course, Kay would greet me with a smile. However, our happiness was short-lived. One big reason was our inability to have children, something we both desired. We both liked children. We thought it would happen quickly. But even after 2-3 years, there was no sign. By the 4th year, we decided to get tested. Finding a cause might have brought some closure. But unfortunately, there was nothing wrong with either of us. It was just a matter of timing. We were both healthy, but we couldn't conceive. It made us think maybe it was about compatibility or fate. My feelings must have shown because I accidentally made Kay cry one night. A news program was featuring children. They're so adorable. I blurted out innocently. Realizing my mistake, I quickly changed the channel. Why are you changing it? I thought it might bother you. It's you who's bothered. Wait, calm down. I am calm. You're the one treating me like I'm fragile, she said, breaking into tears. Kay. After that, we stopped talking about children altogether when children are shown on TV. We no longer brought up the topic. The tension was suffocating. So, I took up fishing, a hobby suggested by my gym buddies. Unfortunately, the friend who recommended it had a completely different schedule. So I couldn't learn from him, and that's when Kay introduced me to Mike. According to Kay, he is an expert fisherman who even owns a boat. Being my wife's best friend, I was pretty nervous at first. Hello, nice to meet you. Well, not for the first time, but it's the first time we're actually having a conversation. I'm really happy to have another fishing buddy. Mike was incredibly kind and did a great job easing my nerves. His fishing skills were as impressive as Kay had said. He was very easygoing and enjoyable to be with. Spending my days off fishing became an escape from the cooling relationship with Kay. Since I was spending every weekend fishing, I started to worry about Kay, so I suggested a weekend trip for the three of us. Mike booked the stay at a lodge in Asheville. I'm sorry for intruding on your couple's trip. Don't be silly. You're not intruding. Thanks for booking that famous lodge. Well, you said Kay wanted to go there. You remembered. I hadn't paid much attention at the time. But thinking back, there might have been something more to their conversation. Let's drop off our bags at the lodge and go night fishing. Night fishing. That sounds great. I've never done it before. I knew Mr. Smith was curious about it. Thank you. Even after all these weeks, aren't the two of you still calling each other Mr.? Mike and I looked at each other. She might be right. Maybe it's time we drop the formalities today. Sounds good. If anyone uses Mr., they owe me $10. $10 is too much. I meant it's a deal. $10 it is. I was surprised to see a side of Kay I never saw at home, lively and youthful in her conversation. Night fishing was a blast. The fish's eyes gleamed blue in the water, creating a magical scene. The technique was different from daytime fishing, moving the rod up and down along the pier wall. Even Kay, a beginner, could do it easily and caught the most fish, thanks to beginner's luck. We had a late dinner in our room. We enjoyed a feast of seafood. It was a delightful meal for both our eyes and stomach. After eating, we took a bath. Mike, feeling tired, opted for the shower in our room. Did he feel awkward intruding on our couple's time? Since we were all close, we decided to sleep in the same room, setting up our beds side by side. It feels like we're back in college. It sure does. I went to an all-boys school. That must have been boring. Hey, don't insult my youth. It was fun in its own way. I kinda envy the all-boys experience. It was just smelly and miserable. We all laughed. I wish these fun times could last forever. It felt like a friendship between men and women that I had never experienced in my youth. All thanks to Mike. I'm not great with alcohol, so I fell asleep at some point. I woke up around 4 a.m. It was still dark outside. I have a terrible hangover headache, probably from the leftover alcohol. It was fun, but I probably got carried away. Then, in the darkness, I heard voices. I thought of asking Kay to bring me some water if she was awake. It's hard to break up, but if it's for happiness, it's worth it. Break up. Squinting in the darkness, I could faintly make out a shocking scene. My face turned pale. Kay and Mike were holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes. It's us, Mike. Don't worry about anything. Thanks, Kay. I trust you. I love you. Hearing their conversation, I hesitantly turned on the light. As the room brightened, they were indeed holding hands. But they quickly let go, surprised by my awakening. What's going on? I blurted out. You were up? What is this, holding hands? I heard you two talking. What is it about breaking up, about loving each other? June, you're misunderstanding. Mike, stay out of this. I'm talking to Kay. You're misunderstanding. This isn't what it looks like. Are you kidding me? This is a joke. Just calm down. How can I calm down? Let me explain. Mike, just stay quiet. But, exactly, that's the problem. Ever since we met as a trio, I felt something more than friendship in your conversations. Were you two together all along? We're just friends, nothing more. Who would believe that after seeing this? I feel betrayed, Mike. I thought we had become friends, but was it just because you had a thing with Kay? That's not true. There's really nothing going on. So, you're both denying it. Have you been enjoying fooling me? Coming on this trip must have been convenient. Enough already. We're telling you there's nothing between us. Huh. Now you're getting defensive. Is this why we couldn't have kids? Because you were with him. What are you talking about? Were you making sure we couldn't conceive because you were with him? That's horrible. Horrible? That's my line. Get out. Leave me right now. Fine. Let's go, Mike. Kay said. But, just go, both of you. They left the room. I had never been so angry. My feelings of betrayal exploded uncontrollably. I couldn't stop it. Kay and Mike having an affair. Why hadn't I suspected it from the beginning? Mike is of the opposite sex. Does a best friend of the opposite sex exist? But, strangely, I had trusted Mike. That's why it hurt even more. I had always wanted children. Alone in the room, I cried. How stupid of me. After about an hour alone, I decided to leave the lodge in Asheville. It was chilly in the early morning. The cold wind seemed to pierce my heart. Mike had already paid for the lodge. I'll get every penny of alimony. I took the train back home. As I started to calm down and plan to talk things over with Kay, I found she had left with all her belongings. Reluctantly, I called Mike. It's me. John, I'm really sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to cause a misunderstanding. I'll talk to you later about this, Mike. Right now, I can't find Kay. Do you know where she is? No, I haven't seen her since then. Okay, thanks. Wait. What? Maybe she's at Emily's. Emily? Yes, I'll try there. I didn't want to talk more with Mike, so I hung up abruptly. I called Emily. Sure enough, Kay was at her place. I went over to talk to Kay. She continued to deny everything. Emily excused herself because it was a marital problem. She left us to talk alone. I lost my temper earlier. I'm sorry for overreacting. But you're the one who betrayed me. I want the truth. How long have you and Mike been involved? No matter how many times you ask, Mike and I are just friends. Kay, there's a limit to lying. Tell me the truth. There's nothing between me and Mike, really. Then her phone rang. It was Mike. Answer it. Not now. If there's nothing to hide, talk in front of me. Fine. She snapped, answering the call. Hello? Yes, I'm okay. I'll explain everything. Please don't do that. Remember what happened last time? Don't worry about me. I'll call you back later. Her concern for Mike infuriated me again. What did Mike say? I'm sorry. You were right. So you admit it? Yes. Since when? A long time ago. This is absurd. I'm sorry. I always wanted kids. 2 kids. But I never said anything to avoid hurting you. I told her. That hurt me even more. She replied. So, an affair was your answer. This betrayal is how it ends. Kay said nothing. I felt a sense of resignation towards my wife. Let's get a divorce. I'll pay back the money by working. Mike could ask his parents to cover with no problem. But I want nothing to do with you or him ever again. I won't ask for alimony. I declared, leaving the room. The next day, we went to the courthouse to file for divorce. It's been 3 years since the divorce. I haven't seen Kay since. I'm still working at the gym. I haven't gone fishing since then either. I want to, but it brings back painful memories. I guess fishing isn't the problem. Maybe it's time to start again. I thought to myself. That's when I saw a familiar face at the gym. It was Mike. John, you have a visitor. It's been a while. What brings you here now? Sorry for showing up unannounced. If you have time, maybe we could have a cup of coffee nearby. Sure. We went to a nearby diner. I'll have the chicken sandwich plate. Same for me. Right away. I really needed to talk to you today about something. What is it? I wanted to apologize for that day. I had no idea you two had divorced. You must have known. No, I really didn't. You still doubt me. I've been overseas for training to take over my family's business. The hotel management? Yes. Where to start? That day, I was consulting Kay about a marriage proposal I received. My parents wanted me to marry a daughter of a financier. But I didn't want to get married. Because of your relationship with Kay? No, hear me out. It's not that I didn't want to get married. I couldn't marry a woman. I might look like a man, but I've always felt like a woman inside. So you're. Yes, exactly. I've felt this way since I can remember. I've been struggling with the conflict between my body and my feelings. My parents noticed I was different, but my father is very traditional and still hasn't accepted it. My mother just follows what he says. No one, not even my parents, understood me. Kay was the only one who did. That day, I was torn between agreeing to the arranged marriage or refusing it and going abroad. If I refused, I might be disowned by my parents. Going abroad meant I would have no one on my side. It was a lonely thought, being away from Kay. That's why you said it would be lonely to part ways. I've always hidden my gender dysphoria for the sake of my family. I've been suppressing my true feelings, wearing clothes I didn't want to wear, speaking words I didn't want to say. I hid it all through school life, but I couldn't bear it when it came to romantic feelings. I wrote a letter to a boy I liked and put it in his locker. He replied, calling me to the back of the school. I was excited, but when I got there, several boys were waiting. They laughed and dressed me to prove I was different and took pictures. Even the boy I liked joined in, calling me disgusting. That's terrible. Nobody understood me. When I finally mustered the courage, this was the result. Somehow, I ended up on the rooftop, thinking of ending my life. But then, Kay stopped me. She and I had known each other since kindergarten, but we never really talked much. I was shy and quiet. She was beautiful, smart, everyone's idol. She took my hand, led me to the classroom, and read the letter out loud in front of the boy I liked, who had a crush on her. The boy's cheeks turned bright red and shouted at her to stop reading. She finished, tore up the letter. It doesn't matter what you look like. He is a million times better than someone with a rotten core. I like Mike so much more than you. Then she took my hand and we walked away. She sounds like a hero. To me, she was. We started talking every day after that. Kay sort of knew about my gender dysphoria all along. Thanks to her, the bullies stopped bothering me and school became enjoyable. All that happened to you. Even after graduation, I couldn't come out because of my parents, so I've been living with this secret. It's been really tough. I couldn't stand up to my parents, and occasionally, I sought advice from Kay. That day, she also shared about her marriage and fertility issues with me. I wanted to apologize after you heard us talking, but I had to refuse the marriage proposal that day. If I missed a chance, I would have been under my parents' control again. So, it was like that. You two were just friends. It was all my misunderstanding. Of course, Kay and I are of opposite sex. Anyone would doubt it, you weren't wrong. But Kay never talked about me. She believed you would understand and trust her. I see. I only found out the truth recently. When I returned to my hometown, I met Kay's parents and learned about the divorce and that she had a child. What? You didn't know? I was speechless. Given my past suicidal thoughts, Kay never spoke about my gender dysphoria to anyone, probably not even to you. I think she's still waiting for you, hoping you'd return. After meeting her parents, I left without seeing Kay. I came back to apologize to you and tell you the whole story. Thank you for sharing such a painful story. I appreciate it. It's my fault. Please go see her soon. Right. I wanted to go see Kay immediately. I drove to her parents' house. Her parents were surprised to see me. Please let me talk to your daughter. Kay came out of the house. Let's talk outside. We walked to a nearby park. All the while, I pondered how to apologize to Kay. I hadn't trusted her, harbored insecurities in our marriage, and I failed to understand her struggles. Maybe if I had listened more, she would have told me about Mike. You came because Mike told you, didn't you? Yes. Mom and Dad must have told him everything, even though I kept silent. You heard about Mike? Yes, he told me. I'm sure you were surprised. I was, but more than that, I realized I owed you an apology. People believe what they see. Anyone might have doubted me and Mike. But I always thought, deep down, you would trust me. But you didn't. I couldn't stand the assumptions about our childlessness, too. I'm truly sorry. Looking back, I realize I was also at fault. I didn't talk about Mike and just acted like we were just girlfriends. I couldn't share about Mike. He thinks he saved me, but it was the other way around. I was feeling the same way he did at that time. What? My parents' business was failing and we had debts. They were constantly fighting. My dad became erratic, and I was lonely. That's when I saved Mike. He was so grateful and always wanted to thank me. His help got my dad's business back on track. I couldn't talk to anyone about my feelings, but Mike was different. Even after my parents remarried, he listened to my complicated feelings. So, I wanted to support him in return. That's why I never told you. I realized too late that I couldn't go back. I thought you'd be happier with someone who could give you children. And then, ironically, I found out I was pregnant after the divorce. I've been raising our child alone. Recently, I started to hope that maybe you'd come back for us, even though it seemed impossible. I've come back. I exclaimed loudly. Yes. I'm sorry I made you wait. Kay's mother appeared with a child who ran towards us. Halfway through, the child let go and ran by himself. Tyler, do you know who this is? Dad? I was stunned. I told him his dad was working far away, believing you'd come back someday. I see. Tyler, I'm sorry I made you wait. Dad, you're home. I'm home. I hugged my son, wiping away tears. Kay cried too. Thank you for waiting. I'm not perfect, but let's be a family again. I'll never hurt you again. And I will protect you too with my life. Kay cried and nodded. I took Tyler's hand and we walked home together. Is 3 years a long or short time? I am ready to make up for lost time with abundant love. I will never let go this hand again. If you found this story gripping, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic tales and life lessons. Don't miss out on our next video, where we dive even deeper into the twists and turns of life's unexpected challenges. Hey everyone, welcome back. You won't believe what happened in today's story. I, male 35, met my ex, female 26, when she was in her first year of college, and I was in my last. We were both studying to become doctors, and that made us fall for each other very fast. We were like a match made in heaven. Some people say there's too much of an age difference between us, 9 years. But it seemed to work out really well for us because she looked up to me and respected me. I helped her study and pass exams for the next 2 years that we dated. During the beginning of our relationship, I graduated and started my own practice in the town. Within a few months, I hired a male nurse to work with me and was looking for a secretary. Meanwhile, my girlfriend started inviting me to her parents' house for dinner monthly, and we all got along really well. Her parents continued to hint towards making wedding arrangements. I usually just ignored them because I thought it was much better to date her longer and let her graduate. During one of these dinners, to change the subject from wedding arrangements, I mentioned how I needed to hire a secretary. My girlfriend's eyes lit up and asked if she could work for me. I asked how she'd keep up with studies while working full-time, and she said she dropped out of school. My jaw dropped in front of her parents. I was embarrassed that she told me this news in front of them because they already knew about it. After dinner, I asked her more about it, and she told me it was only going to be a short break. Her mother was going through medical treatments and would need help in the evenings and occasionally overnight. Although this didn't make a lot of sense to me, I agreed to let her start working as my secretary. During the next year, her routine was to work with me in the office and then help her mother in the evenings. If we were lucky, we had a nice dinner out and an evening at my place over the weekend. I loved having her in my office. Every time I got to walk by her, I was happy to see her face and talk to her. She made the patients feel optimistic and cared for, and she got along fine with the male nurse on staff. He even told me she's going to make a great doctor and wife. While we were out to dinner one night, I proposed. I warned her that we wouldn't get married until she graduated school, but that I wanted to promise ourselves to each other now. She was so thrilled and surprised. She called her parents immediately to share the good news. I was on cloud 9 for the next few weeks. It all came to a screeching halt one day when I happened to see my fiancé in the break room at work. She didn't notice I was there, and neither did the male nurse I hired. They were sitting awfully close to each other, and he was whispering in her ear as she looked at her phone, pretending not to notice how close he was. From above the table, I could tell his arm was reaching for her legs. My heart was beating so loud, I was sure they could hear it. I speed walked to the security room where I looked at the security footage we had from the past few weeks. There were 2 times where I could see him touching her, but nothing else incriminating. That night, I invited her to my house, and while she was in the shower, I unlocked her phone. Her password wasn't what she told me it was, but my fingerprint was still able to unlock it. It was programmed on her phone from when she insisted we wouldn't hide anything from each other. I found what I was hoping not to. Texts between her and the male nurse indicating she didn't believe she got enough attention from me and that I took too long to propose. As I continued reading, I found arrangements they'd made for her to sleep over his house and commentary about how good he was in bed. Needless to say, I was furious. My hands were shaking as I held her phone. I was the one that helped her study, hired her at my practice, and trusted her to be my faithful bride. Using her phone, I sent myself the screenshots of their conversation and didn't even bother to cover my tracks. After her shower, she left to go help her mom. Right around the time she would have gotten there and had time to unlock her phone, she called me. I didn't answer. She called me again and again, 32 times to be exact. At this point, I felt powerful and proud of myself. I didn't blow up at her or lose my temper at all, which made her suffering even worse. She left voicemails that said she noticed I saw the messages and that I have proof of it. She begged me not to tell her parents or anyone else and said that if I forgave her, she'd be faithful to me forever. I laughed out loud. Anyone who can't prove their loyalty to someone for a few years doesn't deserve the promise of a lifetime. She had also shown me her flakiness in the way she suddenly dropped out of medical school. I tried to give her a chance to show me that she had the drive and respect I needed from her, that she needed from herself, but she failed miserably. I waited as long as I could to call her. She was so hopeful when she answered the phone, but all I said was that she was fired and didn't need to return to the office. She started sobbing just before I hung up on her. I also fired the male nurse, and it was easy for me to find replacements for both of them. My business didn't suffer at all. As a matter of fact, it improved. I hardly grieved over the loss of this woman, because had I married her, it would have been so much worse. I wasn't planning to tell her parents what happened, but after her father asked a fourth time, I sent him the screenshots I had. He replied with sympathy, encouragement, and expressed that I didn't deserve to be treated that way. The day after that, my ex left a voicemail on my phone screaming at me for telling her dad about what she did. She complained that they weren't going to pay for her schooling anymore because she proved herself to be an idiot. Opie, I am so sorry you found yourself in this situation. You seem to be a great man with a good head on your shoulders. She chose to be unfaithful while she was working for you. She should have treated you with the respect you deserved as her boss and her fiancé. You are certainly right to assume that she would not be faithful in your marriage. Congratulations for handling yourself in a respectable way while maintaining your job as a doctor. Now, let's get into today's second story. I am writing this as a bit of a journaling exercise and maybe for some support from people who have been through the same. Thanks for being so welcoming. We have been together since 2015, and early on I planned for this to be a lifelong relationship. It was rocky along the way, and this is part of the reason I never managed to propose. However, there is still a very mature ring fund, which will go somewhere else now, I'm sure. Around 2019, I began to think that maybe our relationship was not going to be like how I had imagined it. We fought a lot, nothing physical, of course, just disagreements and mutual pouting and discontent. Our sex life dropped off significantly after 2016 for medical reasons, and it never really seemed to recover. In June of last year, we had a D&M where she said, in as many words, that I did not satisfy her. I had never satisfied her, and the thought of me in bed made her sick. It was very upsetting at the time, and in hindsight, I should have called our relationship then, but we decided initially that we would try to work our way through our problems, and we also ended up having a 4-month-long lockdown shortly afterward, so I didn't want to throw her onto the street or anything. Around September, I discovered she had been sexting some guy overseas, a total breach of trust, but I decided I would bracket it because there was nothing physical, and even though we never discussed it openly, I thought she knew that I knew. I never broached this directly, but we eventually decided we would go to couples therapy. I discovered yesterday that she slept with another man in November last year while she was out of town on a short holiday. Some random she met online, and I presumed she had been chatting with for a few weeks at least. I didn't care to ask for the exact date, but it was either shortly before or shortly after our first couples therapy session. When she went to work today, I left a note on the table saying goodbye, packed a bag, and went to my parents' place for a few days. This evening after she came home, we had an hour-long SMS-only discussion. I don't want to talk about it aloud. I can't put my words together in time to speak them, where she took responsibility for everything, promised to change, and asked if I would come back. I appreciated her honesty. I believe everything she has said. This was completely unlike her, something she acknowledged, and she is afflicted by both mental illness and gruesome sexual trauma as a child and young adult. But I said that this was a hard barrier for me, and I would not consider coming back, even if we continue to seek couples therapy for this issue. I said I would consider going back to our therapist to work through the breakup process, as we had discussed this previously in one of our sessions, and I can see how it could be helpful. It is also something our therapist has worked on. Even if we could make our way past this, and she found a way to fix herself, it would always be a part of our past, and something I will never be able to reconcile myself with while we were in a relationship. I don't fully believe that there has only been one other man. I asked how many other people she has had sex with during our relationship, and she said one, but I think this might have been a very strict definition of sex, and that she has been emotionally and physical cheating with several other men over at least the past 6 months, and even up until now. She said that this was a part of her life that felt like it was without consequence, and although that is obviously wrong, I can understand what she was saying. Anyway, the number doesn't matter. One is one too many. I feel very dirty for how I found this all out, especially since I was going by gut feeling, but I feel partially vindicated by my gut being right. I don't know if I can shake this feeling of shame for having been able to discover this, even though it is for the best that I know, and that we separate. I will likely be moving my appointment with my own therapist forward a few weeks to help with where I go from here. I don't quite know how she moved on from this, but I am trying my best to focus on myself. I don't know what I will do with myself yet, because so much of who I am, what I do, and what I'm like revolved around what we were. I picked up my guitar for the first time in a few months and couldn't do much with it. I don't play as much now because I felt embarrassed playing around her. Not her fault. She was always very encouraging of all my creative pursuits. I have a few friends, but I am both a very reserved person and also someone who gets lonely easily. I might need to house share because I don't know if living alone is a good idea for me right now. I did say that I hope we can be friends one day, and I really do. Besides the infidelity and our other problems, she's great, and we did gel in a very cool way. But in my heart of hearts, it doesn't seem likely at the very least as soon as either one of us starts seeing someone else. Unless they're super chill, I don't think it's going to work. I've decided that I'm not going to be super candid with other people about the circumstances of our breakup. There's no need to be, but it's something that I would mention to a future partner, and I can imagine for them that it would be a bit weird for your partner to be friends with their ex who is also a cheater. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. She will likely move to another city, and we won't have much opportunity to see each other again anyway. Anyway, that's my story. There were times this morning when I thought I might try to just let it slide and forget about it, but I'm glad the part of me which stood fast won over, because there was really no future knowing this. It would always eat at me. I don't know what the future holds, and I am truly scared because I have had struggles with alcohol and smoking in the past which my partner really helped me to temper. I stopped smoking as a condition of getting together, which I'm grateful for. Maybe with a sneaky cigarette every now and then at the pub, and I don't have that anymore. I have made a short list of things for me to try to do with myself for the next 4 weeks, and have committed to not buying any spirits at all for now, and only smoking if I've gone out and someone offers. I don't go out often, so this is generally sustainable for me. If there is anything any of you have done to get past the first few weeks and your breakup, due to infidelity, I would certainly appreciate any advice. If you have made it this far, thanks a lot for reading. Hope you are getting along your journey all right as well. If you are, then feel free to drop into the comments and let me know that it gets better because I need it. It's sad when you have perspectives with your partner and you realize that it was only you who thought about a future together. In any case, according to your history, it feels that she was never an honest girlfriend to you. I think there are many red flags after the time together. For example, constant arguments and lack of sex. I think your decision is correct. She spent weeks preparing the last one she did where he went directly to sleep with him. The best thing you can do right now is to go get your things when she's not around and cut off all kinds of relationships, really. Why keep talking to such a disgusting person? Just say goodbye and cut your losses. Best of luck to you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts. Take care. Hey everyone, welcome back. You won't believe the shocking betrayal I discovered at home. My wife, 42 female, and I, 48 male, were married for 14 years. We never had any children, but that's not to say we didn't try. She was a manager at Kmart, and I worked in a shipping warehouse. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like we belonged with each other and our work crew. We had a routine and friends like family that I wouldn't have traded for the world. We were always honest, talkative, attentive, and considerate of each other. Our sense of humor was pretty dark. We liked watching and reading things online that would make other people squeamish. We also thought it was super funny when we ripped on each other and our friends thought we were seriously fighting. People from our apartment building would take turns cooking on the grill for the rest of us for a giant cookout. One day, the grill was moved to a different spot and caught a tree on fire. It spread to roof of the building and down all in a matter of minutes. Thankfully, everyone survived, but my wife and I passed out and had to be rescued by a volunteer firefighter before the fire trucks even arrived. We were taken to the hospital for asphyxiation from smoke inhalation. I was discharged 2 weeks before my wife because she wasn't able to cover her mouth and nose like I did while I searched for her. It's impossible to see in smoke like that, so I started choking before I found her. While my wife recovered, she was conscious, but she needed special attention and respiratory treatment. I noticed one doctor that seemed to care very deeply about my wife. He was handsome and charming, which irritated me. My wife smiled at him, and they looked into each other's eyes very intently when they mostly him spoke. When I started staying by my wife's side, the doctor told me he was the one to receive her that day in the ER, and he'd been looking after her ever since. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted my wife to get the care she needed, but I didn't like this guy. He seemed to think too highly of himself and think he could take my wife if he wanted to. When he helped her stand up, he put his arm around her waist and held her close. She took her time moving when he was like that. I was struggling with my thoughts at this point. She didn't really need help walking, did she? My wife could barely speak, but she seemed smitten with the doctor and emotionally strained when she looked at me. She never said anything really alarming, but it was clear something had changed. We had a near-death experience, and that does change people, but I didn't want to believe my wife, and I wouldn't make it through this together unchanged. When it was time for her to be discharged, she hesitated to go home. She asked if she could stay in the hospital longer, which gave the doctor the opportunity to offer her follow-up visits at her home. I was very suspicious and didn't think it was all in my head anymore. I thought about objecting, but decided not to. I imagined how bad and weird it would look for me to deny my wife doctor visits. Even if he was pushing boundaries, I'd look like the bad guy. I couldn't believe he so easily agreed to make house visits. This was something a person with much less qualifications could have done, so I was positive it was because he at least wanted to visit my wife, if not more. The very first doctor visit was at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Of course, I was at work. I texted my wife at 9:10 to ask if he was there and how it was going. She didn't reply, so I started to wonder what was going on. I felt like a shell of a person walking around the warehouse. 2 hours later, I still heard nothing from her. Coworkers approached me, concerned for my well-being, because I was pale and clammy. At 11:25, I was pulling into her driveway. I drove recklessly to get there as fast as I could after I got permission from my boss. I noticed his luxury vehicle and that the front door was locked, which was unusual for when we had a visitor. As I walked up the stairs, I heard them. Our dresser was pinning the bedroom door open against the wall because privacy was never a concern of ours. When I got there, I just dropped to my knees. I had no control over my body. The doctor leaped up and scrambled to get his pants on, flushed and angry. My wife covered herself with blankets, yelling helplessly as I rose to my feet and started throwing punches. It was the loudest I heard her since before the fire, and it made my blood run cold. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. Something made her change and let this man screw up her emotions. After I got in a few punches in my adrenalized state, the doctor must have realized what a dire and unprofessional situation he was in, because he stumbled down the stairs, got to his car, and drove off. In the bedroom, my wife apologized profusely and pleaded for me to forgive her, but I just screamed no and called her names that accurately described what she did. Of course, when I said cheater, she tried to say I stopped them, so it didn't count. She failed to understand that trying to seduce him with her eyes and gestures in the hospital and making out with him in the nude still counted as cheating. At first, I was worried he was going to press charges against me, and it would be my word against his, but nothing happened for months. I tried to get the doctor fired, but it didn't work because nothing was captured on camera and he hadn't told anyone he was making a house call. Plus, he had expensive lawyers that would pin all the blame on me for causing him injuries. My wife left pitiful voicemails on my phone, but when she realized I couldn't stand to look at her, she continued seeing the doctor, even before our divorce was final. I ended up kicking her out of the house, and a week later she posted that she was in a relationship with him. It made me sick. Life really seemed cruel, unfair, and without reason at this point. Thankfully, that's when it all started to turn around. She moved in with the doctor, who wasn't going to hand her money to help with the divorce aftermath. It didn't take long before AP realized what a mess she was and dumped her, kicking her to the curb when she had nothing else. She was so defeated, she didn't even try to get me to let her back in. Her sister let her move in, since she was exceptionally depressed after screwing up her whole life with me. My ex calls me occasionally, saying she misses me and would give anything in the world to have another chance at being my wife. She sort of blames the fire at our apartment for screwing up her head and making her think she felt things for the doctor when it was just survivor thankfulness. I didn't believe a word she said. For all I knew, she wouldn't be saying any of that to me if it weren't for AP leaving her. Opie, I am so sorry your wife cheated on you with her doctor. It most likely was because her emotions of recovery influenced her to do something she hadn't done before. Emotions are not as big and powerful as what people think. With maturity, practice, and self-control, anyone can manage their emotions and do what's right. If denying the temptation bothers them that much, they should wait 72 hours after rejoining their spouse before deciding to talk to them about it. This conversation could end the relationship, since there's temptation, but at least there's a chance some sense could be talked into the tempted one and the two of you could grow stronger. You did the right thing by separating from her after stopping them. That's the only way to get a clear head and realize you're going to be okay without that person in your life. It takes strength and courage to part from people that have hurt us, but it is better to stand on your own for a while than with a traitor. Thanks for sharing with us. Now, let's move on to our next story for the day. At the time of this story, my wife was 26 and I was 25. We were getting along fine, married for 3 years, together for 6. Ironically, one of the things that attracted me to her the most was her maturity. She usually thought through any big life decisions very carefully, like what college she went to, haircuts she tried, and most importantly, when she wanted to have kids. Her parents raised her to think things through, but they were never very good with money. Her grandmother was the one to put her through college. So in her 3rd year of marriage, we had debt from my schooling and some of hers, and she still hadn't landed a job in her field. What she was working wasn't paying well at all, so a lot of the strain was on me. I could tell she felt bad, but I didn't know she was about to make a big decision without talking to me first. She decided to sell her car and met a potential buyer on a Monday while I was at work. He was very excited about it, but he couldn't drive it home until the weekend. So to reserve it, he paid her in full. Cash. She gave him a bill of sale, dated, signed, and notarized. However, she continued driving the car, and I didn't realize she'd sold it. She mentioned over dinner that she really loved her car, and then she broke down into tears. That's when she explained it all to me and added that she'd spent half of his cash on our bills and debt payments. I was pretty upset with her, and I told her she'd probably have to sell her car to him since we couldn't pay him back his money. Her face was deflated, but accepted facts. She screwed up by selling a car she loved and needed, but she had to follow through now. I was at work on Saturday when my wife said the buyer was coming to get the car. She didn't respond to me while he was there, so that made me worry. I checked the live feed of our security camera out front. I only saw a guy, crew cut, standing in the driveway with the cars, but I rewound it a little and saw that the buyer had arrived with a crew cut to help drive the cars home. When my wife talked to him, it seemed like she was giving him bad news. He waved his arms around and rubbed his head like she was stressing him out. Just when it looked like he was threatening to sue her, she got him to quiet down and lean close to her so she could whisper something. She didn't know the camera didn't record audio. Instantly, his face softened and he smiled. He looked so surprised and happy with whatever she said. He glanced at the camera as my wife took him by the hand and led him around to the back of the house where we didn't have cameras. Crew Cut just waited awkwardly in the driveway for several minutes. I was already driving home, furious. By the time I got there, the men and their car were gone. My wife's car was still there. She greeted me warmly as if everything was fine until she saw the anger in my eyes. I shoved past her to the backyard where I searched our patio furniture for any signs of foul play. Stuff looked moved around, but I couldn't find anything. I looked across the yard and noticed that our neighbor had a backyard camera that covered our yard too. I knocked on their door and after hearing my story, they invited me in and recovered the footage for me. They watched the video with me the first time of my wife having sex with the guy on the patio, just like I pictured. I spent walk towards my wife, standing helplessly worried in the backyard. She knew what I was doing and that our marriage could be over. As soon as I started playing her the video, she dropped to her knees. She didn't want to see it and tried saying she was sorry over and over again, as if that would make it all go away. I told her I hated her for what she did to me. I started my life with her, accepting her past and life as my responsibility, and I managed to keep her safe and happy, only for her to end it all by sleeping with someone to pay off a debt. It was low and desperate, and she didn't need to do it. I told her to own up to her decision and follow through with selling the car. She went behind my back and lied more than once. My heart was broken. She told me she didn't see any other way out of it because she felt like she needed her car and his money. Then she kind of bragged by saying she offered him half his money back, but he said her skills paid him back in full. I packed my stuff while she cried and talked about how our bills were paid, so I should be happy and forget anything happened. I went to stay with my coworker. It was awkward and it made me feel lost. I had to find my packed toothbrush and toothpaste, and while digging through my bag of belongings, I found a pair of my wife's undies. It made me grieve for my loss. She fought me tooth and nail in court, even trying to claim that I was abusive and she was desperate to fall in love again. It was nothing like what you'd expect a woman to say to a judge. Since she couldn't prove anything and I had her cheating on film, she was ordered to leave the house. I sold it and started my life over in a different state, where I was offered twice my previous salary for doing the same amount of work. I know I lucked out and most infidelity victims aren't so lucky, but I wanted people to know that even when I felt that heart pang at my wife's clothing mixed with mine, I didn't run back to her. I deserved a chance at genuine love with someone else, and I actually found it in my new home state of Connecticut. OP, what your wife did was extremely low, and it shows that she didn't think very highly of herself or the vows she took to remain loyal to you. It's hard to imagine why she didn't talk to you about selling her car in the first place, or at least think it through. You did the right thing by checking the camera and going home to figure out what was happening, and as hard as it was to leave her there, feeling so remorseful, it was the right thing for you. After a spouse has committed adultery, it's a good idea to take some days away from them without contact. They've already cheated, so keeping an eye on them is only going to stress you out and make you more desperate to save the relationship instead of realizing you're okay without someone who's willing to do this to you. She made a very, very poor decision that the relationship couldn't recover from, all because she didn't talk to her spouse first about what she was thinking. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Out of the blue, but it goes back 3 months. First off, let me introduce myself. I'm Daniel, 28 years old. I was dating Sarah, 26 years old. But then I found out she had been cheating on me with a guy named Mike, 33 years old. Furthermore, Mike was engaged to a woman named Linda. She was 30. Sarah and I have been together since college, living together, fighting now and then, but mostly playing the fool in love. However, one day, I randomly remembered how a close friend of mine went through a nasty divorce, which got me suspicious of her actions. More precisely, I got curious about her phone. My anxiety got the better of me. So, while she was asleep, I checked her phone but didn't find any damning evidence at first. Just when I thought I was worried over nothing, I noticed a contact saved under Sarah in her phone, which was odd. Displaying the contact revealed a number I didn't recognize. I dialed it from my phone. Suddenly, a ringtone sounded from somewhere in the room. I seized the moment while she was still asleep to locate the ringing phone. Eventually, I found an unfamiliar phone hidden in the pocket of her coat in the closet. Sneaking into the bathroom, I checked the unknown phone. I was met with a flood of messages then. Tracing the emails back, it turned out their affair had been going on for 3 years. What a mess. Apparently, the guy was loaded and sweet to boot. I stepped outside, overwhelmed by my sadness, anger, and cowardice, and I called my best friend. Even though it was the middle of the night, but I oddly found myself laughing. The friend Ryan answered with, "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I was sleeping. "Yeah, my bad. What's up with you? I need your help this time." "This time? You've got to be kidding." "Afraid it's exactly that." "Are you serious?" "I wouldn't be calling you in the middle of the night if I weren't." "All right, I'm on my way." "You're at your place, right? Stay there and don't do anything stupid." After hanging up, I forwarded emails from Sarah's secret phone to mine. The content was appalling. "I love you." "Me too." "I'm so happy I met you." I just kept forwarding those messages. Soon after, Ryan arrived in his car. I started with an apology. "Sorry for dragging you out here in the middle of the night. I didn't mean to call you out. I'm just returning the favor for what you did for me," he said. I showed him the forwarded messages on my phone as soon as I got into his car. "No thanks, I don't need to see all of them. It's gross." "So, what do you want to do?" Given the suddenness of it all, I don't really know what I want. Honestly, I just thought of your divorce mess and ended up uncovering all this. I felt bad for calling you so late, but you're the only one I could talk to about this. He laughed. "You thought of my situation, huh? That's harsh. So, what do you want to do?" I honestly replied, "I want to punch someone right now." "Calm down, you know that's not going to solve anything, right?" "You know what? I can't stop the tears or laughter, but I'm calm. If you do something crazy, I'll knock some sense into you." He warned. "Thanks, I might need that." "So, what should we do about those two?" After thinking it over for a bit, he suggested. "The guy's rich, right? Why not shake him down for some cash?" But I replied, "No, I won't. Unlike you, I'm not in a position to demand compensation." "Okay, then let's see. I'm not considering hiring a private investigator, just so you know." After pondering for a while, he said, "Let's forget violence. How about we corner them, but you figure out how to do that?" I just nodded. Got it." Once my bout of tearful laughter had subsided, I went back inside, put Sarah's phone back, and crashed on the sofa. The next day, just before noon, Sarah literally woke me up with a slap. Feeling absolutely terrible. "Why are you sleeping here? You're going to be late." I had plenty of time, and my alarm hadn't even gone off yet. I left for work irritated beyond belief. It was then that the last bit of affection I had started to fade away. I had thought about giving it another go, but her inexplicable outburst in the morning made me decide on separation and revenge. From then on, I pretended everything was normal while sneaking peeks at the emails on the closet phone at night. "My boyfriend is being cold. I'm here if you need someone to talk to." As if the guy causing the problem could offer a solution, right? "I want to hear all about it, maybe at your place." The idiot called Mike wants to come over to our place, huh? Well, maybe if I make myself scarce, he'll show up. Let's set something up. Anyway, I am checking the closet and saving emails like a thief every night, but she's totally clueless. They both have no idea they're being found out. I've been pretending to sleep on the sofa at night, saying I'm just tired while Sarah obediently goes to bed alone, sulking though. She never imagined I'd be setting a trap. First up, the classic fake business trip for 3 days. Our company doesn't even do business trips. Plus, I withdrew all our joint savings and canceled the house lease. At the same time, I signed a lease for a new place just for myself. Almost everything went according to plan within 2 weeks, sleeping on the sofa every night. I barely got any rest, but it was worth it. The last email I saved was, "We'll see each other soon." And, "Love you lots." That perked me right up. On the day of my supposed business trip, things went off script. I never expected Sarah to invite Mike over on the very first day. I hadn't taken the day off yet, so I reluctantly went to work. That's where Ryan came in clutch. As soon as Sarah left for work, Ryan came to my house. He moved everything I owned to a storage unit. Originally, I was supposed to move everything to my new place on a day off. I rushed through my work that day and asked my boss for early leave. It put a slight strain on my work reputation, but since it didn't affect my job performance, he let me go. Then I met up with Ryan. He finished moving everything quickly, and the house was practically empty. Not a trace of me left, as if I'd vanished. It was hilariously perfect. When Ryan saw me, he said with a bit of excitement, "This plan is pretty hardcore. You really fought it through. I might be an idiot for not realizing sooner, but I've been fooled for 3 years. This is nothing compared to that. If she didn't like me, she could have just broken up and then gone out with him. It's just that simple step she skipped." All right, ready to move on to the next part. At that moment, I had another plan in mind, to involve Linda, Mike's fiancée. Somehow, Ryan had taken 2 weeks off work to track down Mike using a photo from Sarah's phone. Not only did he find him, but he also managed to locate his house, a move straight out of a private investigator's playbook. That wouldn't have been possible if Sarah and Mike didn't work at the same place. Furthermore, Ryan made sure Mike wasn't home before he approached Linda's house. Then Linda came out. After explaining everything in detail to her, she broke down in tears, unable to believe it. Ryan also shared his own divorce story with her and asked for her cooperation. She agreed to help us. In the car, on the way to pick up her, he mentioned softly, "Linda seemed like a good person. Lucky it's before the wedding." Sounding quite sad, we arrived at Mike's house, and Ryan called Linda out. I got out of the car and greeted her neatly. She looked like an average person, not exceptionally beautiful. When I said, "I'm terribly sorry for my girlfriend's outrageous behavior, and I'm really sorry to involve you in this plan," she replied, "You apologizing won't change anything. I feel the same." And she continued, "I also apologize for the mistake of the man who is to be my husband." Ryan then interjected, "Linda, even though you're not married yet, what you might see today could be the worst scenario possible, something you'd never want to witness. Are you sure you're okay with this? If it's too much, you don't have to come. We'll still report back to you and provide the evidence." Indeed, from my perspective, she looked worn out and listless, the primary victim being thrust into this mess. However, she firmly said, "I'm okay. Today, we have a family meeting planned with both our parents. No matter what happens or in what condition, we'll drag Mike back. Sarah will also be brought along. Please understand that." Her demeanor changed from sorrowful and apologetic to determined. A warrior was born. In the car, we explained the plan in detail to Linda. "I'm breaking up with her anyway, so whatever happens next is fine by me. Don't you have any lingering feelings?" Honestly, I did at first. But seeing her go on with her life without any guilt, I've completely lost those feelings. "I understand. I wondered if it would be bad for you if you still had feelings, but it seems I needn't have worried." I initially thought she was frail, but she turned out to be quite intimidating. While Linda and I waited in the car, Ryan kept watch. Linda shared that she had been cheated on by a previous boyfriend before dating Mike. She had warned him, If your cheating ever comes to light, I won't just cry and let it end there. He had assured her. If I cheated, I'd have to die along with the other woman. Believe me, I love only you. Goodbye to Mike's future. Then, a call from Ryan. They're here, no doubt about it. Ready. The moment had arrived. I jumped out of the car and headed to where he was. Sarah and Mike walked up, arm in arm, looking pleased with themselves. I was the only one who slumped at the sight. Linda mused. I wonder what kind of face Sarah will make when she sees the almost empty house. She was grinning as if it was someone else's problem. Terrifying. But hearing that reignited my fighting spirit. Thank you, warrior. Even from behind, it was clear. Sarah unlocked the door, and the moment she opened it, she froze. My spirit soared. Sarah entered the house, followed by Mike. I tiptoed to the door. Then, I got a call from Sarah. Just as expected. Time for action. I swung the door open and answered the phone with, "Hello," only for her to scream, "Oh my God," and Mike to freak out with, "No way." At that moment, Ryan and Linda weren't yet at the door. "Why are you here? What about your business trip?" I laughed and said, "Of course." It was a lie. "That's terrible. You tricked me." "Tricked? Compared to 3 years, this is nothing." "What do you mean 3 years?" That's when I called Sarah's other phone. The ringtone ominously echoed. "No." You saw it? Snooping around is the worst. The absolute worst. Is the person who looked the worst. You can't forgive him. Of course. I can't believe this. Then it's over between us. Right here, right now. I've already moved out everything I bought. This house's lease is canceled too. She was stunned. One last thing. Say the same thing to this person. I opened the door and there was Linda. Nice to meet you. I am Mike's fiancée, Linda. Sarah froze completely at the sudden turn of events. When Mike stammered, "Hey, why are you here?" Linda coolly replied, "Why? Because you were followed, and this is the result." Just then, Ryan popped up saying, "Oh, hello. I'm from the detective agency. We've recorded all the emails and conversations." Whoa, an unexpected bluff. What's that about? I wasn't even informed. Mike just collapsed right there. With a sly smile yet politely, Linda said, "Thank you for your work. Even if it was just for a few hours." Ryan was like, "Oh, no problem at all. With that, we'll be off." Linda added, all with a smile, "Well, this place is already canceled. No point standing around. Let's go home. Our parents will be arriving soon." Mike was trembling and expressing his apology. Sarah just collapsed. I said, "It might be tough, but hang in there. I'll be leaving now. If anything comes up, contact me right away." And decided to leave. Linda thanked me and closed the door. Sarah was saying, "Daniel, it's not what it looks." Wait. But I didn't hear the rest. Perhaps she remembered. I said I wouldn't listen to any excuses. As Ryan and I waited in the car, a taxi arrived at the house shortly after. All three came out of the house from a distance. There seemed to be no physical altercation among them, which was a relief. I went to change my phone number and email immediately. I stayed at Ryan's place that night, and as planned, I used my day off the next day for the moving process. I made sure to properly thank him, and now I live peacefully as if nothing happened. As for the aftermath for the three of them, firstly, Mike's engagement was broken off. He was sued for compensation in the presence of a lawyer. It turns out he wasn't as wealthy as he claims to be. He had to pay the expense in installments. Sarah was also sued for compensation by Linda. It was quite the scene with their parents involved. I don't know what happened to her after she paid the money in full. Linda went back to her parents' house. Before leaving, she specifically came to report on those two fools and said she would be living quietly at home for a while. As for Ryan, who worked so hard for me, he fortunately found a new girlfriend. Everything turned out well in the end. When I first discovered Sarah's infidelity, I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. Yet, with the help of my good friend, I managed to get my revenge and felt a great sense of relief. To this day, I still don't understand why Sarah chose to cheat when breaking up would have been so simple if we weren't even married. If she was just after the thrill, it certainly ended in a foolish way. I hope Ryan and Linda find happiness in the future for their help in this matter. If you found this story as jaw-dropping as I did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more intense stories. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so